We're here with Dr. Ruth Litovsky, and she is this year's AAS recipient of the Carhart Award, and she will be delivering the Carhart Lecture, which has a long and storied history with AAS for acknowledging expertise in the area of people that have really bridged what I think is one of the hallmarks of AAS, is that interdisciplinary nature. And Ruth, looking at, and really I've known you since back when you were out east at Amherst, and then spent the years in Boston, and then more recently for the last, I guess time flies as we're having fun, but for the last almost 20 years now, you've been in the Midwest at University of Wisconsin. And in looking at your program of research and the way that it applies into clinical practice with binaural hearing and now cognition. And I'm just really excited to have you deliver this year's Carhart Lecture. Congratulations. And would you tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about this year?
Absolutely. Let me begin by, of course, saying that I'm deeply, deeply honored to receive this award and to be able to talk about the research that my team has been doing for, as you said, about 20 years at the University of Wisconsin. So my history is that I started my research in binaural hearing in people with normal hearing, and I became very interested in how to apply questions about basic science to people who have hearing loss. And about 20 years ago, the idea that we could give 2 cochlear implants to patients became increasingly more tractable in the clinical domain. And so we began to look at the extent to which having access to sound in both ears helps people who have 2 cochlear implants. And of course, when we present sounds in the free field and they reach the ears of normal hearing people, the binaural system does a beautiful job of retaining important cues such as interaural differences in time and in intensity, and the brain does a beautiful job of capturing those cues. In people with 2 cochlear implants, we found that having access to sound in both ears has tremendous benefits. For example, they're better able to localize sound. They're better able to hear speech in noise. However, performance is not as good as it is in normal hearing people. Sure. And so the research team dove into what I call reverse engineering questions, where we go back to seeing how we can improve access to the electrical stimulation in the cochlea. What are the important factors that matter? Is it important to match the pitch of sounds across the ears? Mm-hmm. Is it important to select specific electrodes that have better representation of the information, maybe because the neural health is better? And we also started to look at children, and it turns out that children who are very young, even down to age 2.5, if they get 2 cochlear implants at a young age, they're also able to know where sounds are coming from. We use a really fun task, the reaching for sound task, where we get them to reach in a game that they play. They reach for a sound that's hidden behind a curtain, and they find where the sound is. So we are also therefore really excited about asking questions that have to do with plasticity. And is there a period after which, if you don't have 2 cochlear implants, you can't use the information or you can't take advantage of sounds in both ears? And it turns out you can push that window out pretty far, which I think gives a lot of opportunity for restoring bilateral hearing. The other group of patients who are, of course, more recently being looked at for bilateral benefits are people with single-sided deafness who have one normal ear and another ear which is deaf. And so more recently, we have learned about people with SSDCI and the benefits that they can get with these 2 very different cues across the ears. But what's really interesting in all of these populations is not just the measures of localization and speech understanding and noise, but the cognitive load. Patients say to us that when they come home after listening all day, having 2 ears means that they have expended less effort. We call that listening effort or cognitive load. And there's a really long history of studies in this field. But we have started to look at that in two domains. One is using pupillometry. It turns out that if you measure the size of the pupil through time with an eye tracker, you can measure real-time changes in listening effort. So I'm going to talk about that.
Awesome.
And then the other area that we have dove into is using functional near-infrared spectroscopy, which is a way to measure neural activation in cochlear implant users because the FNIRS is safe to use with people who have ferrous materials in their heads. And so we're looking at both auditory cortex and frontal areas in the brain to assess whether we can have good access to a neural signature of listening effort. So that kind of summarizes what I'm going to talk about.
I can't wait. I mean, thank you for that preview and overview of your presentation. I'm so excited that you are delivering this year's Carhart Lecture and such a deserving recipient. I mean, looking at your vita and over 100 peer-reviewed publications and really stemming really from that bench to bedside and another 20 book chapters and really, I think, embodies what this award and this presentation is designed for. So thank you for, I wish, and with me in Minnesota, you in Wisconsin, I mean, I'd much rather be in Arizona next month, but your Carhart Lecture will be on March 4th. The AAS meeting is going from March 4th to March 6th. If you haven't registered yet and you're watching this video, please do so. This, you won't regret it, and I really appreciate your taking the time to chat with me today, and I look forward to seeing you in a virtual sense in March.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it as well. And again, thank you so much for the honor. I'm deeply, deeply honored.
Thank you, Ruth.